What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Sunday, end of the weekend, first day of October 1st, 2023. Goodness. It is about 11:13 a.m. California time here. We did have a 4.1 earthquake into our area of the southern edge of the Cascadia subduction zone. We'll check that out here in a second. Getting a pretty good swarm of activity here, as noted on the Earthquake 3D program. Getting a pretty good stack of pancake earthquakes there on the map. As you can see on the globe, quite a few 2s and 3s kicking up here around this area of Puerto Rico. A couple different swarming areas that we're watching, of course, around the southwestern edge here of the Puerto Rico region. And a couple new swarms here to the east and also up around the Puerto Rico Trench, where the latest earthquake is a 3.5. Now this area is pretty dynamic in terms of the plate setup out here. This is a north view of it. Say, for example, if you're looking, flip this map around and looking at it from the north, it kind of shows you exactly where the subduction zone is of the Puerto Rico Trench. The arrows here pointing towards the general location where this subduction zone's at and where it's moving. You also got the Morotos Trough down here south of the Puerto Rico area. It's going to be this region right here. By the way, this is historical data. We'll check that out here in a second. But you got the Morotos Trough, Puerto Rico Trench, pretty much squeezing this entire area in terms of plate dynamics. That's quite, or plate tectonics, that's quite dynamic. Puerto Rico right here, Caribbean plate that it sits on, the North American plate kind of subducting here in this region, so it's a very sensitive area in terms of the potential for large-scale movement. A look at the wording from Google on the Puerto Rico Trench. It is a geologically complex ocean trench, and it's associated with the most negative gravity anomaly on Earth, which indicates the presence of an active downward force. Now, the Puerto Rico Trench has produced earthquakes greater than magnitude 8.0 and is considered capable of continuing to do so. Now, we haven't really seen, well, it looks like right here they mentioned a magnitude 8.1 and a 6.9 north of this area back in 1946. I pulled up the historical data here for this area. Of course, we have that subduction zone that extends over here. I drew a rectangle here on the map, so it's not covering all of this area down here, but specifically just around the Puerto Rico Trench. In the year, earlier this year, I should say, back in July, we did see a 6.6 out here away from the plate boundary, which is indicated right here on the map. That basically tells me right there that there's quite a bit of strain along the subduction zone interface itself. When we see these earthquakes that happen off of the plate boundary, that's obviously some strain back building. So this area definitely capable of producing some significant sized earthquakes. Specifically around the Puerto Rico area, we're looking at older movement quakes. It's been quite a while since we've had any large scale movement quakes. 1943, 7.7. And this model here showed, 1946 and 8.1. I am not seeing that 8.1 up here on the map, so it's possible they got a different magnitude. Now this one's over by St. John's area, near the Barbuda region over here across this subduction zone. But we're lacking a lot of movement here across this area of the Puerto Rico Trench, and it shows, that's for sure. So getting back to the earthquake specifically around the Puerto Rico area, U.S. British Virgin Islands region, 7.3 back in 1867, 6.5 the next year, back in 1868. So large movement quakes here have been active, but in the past, quite a bit in the past. And I'm not for sure what the accumulated slip rate is out here. I don't really have that set up here across this area, but I'm sure it builds up quite a bit of strain there. I don't think it takes thousands of years to produce a large major earthquake out here across the Puerto Rico Trench. So things just kind of stirring up out here today. And it's definitely wise to keep an eye on this area. The tsunami potential is actually quite great out here as well. Whether that would affect the eastern portion of the country or not is debatable. I did a little bit of updating, or a little bit of studying on this in the past couple years, and made a few videos regarding that potential. They're on the channel. I'll include at least one of them discussing that tsunami potential out here for the states, pending a mega quake out here across the Puerto Rico Trench. That video will be at the end of this video. But just kind of watching it, folks. Getting a pretty good swarm of activity. Older movement out here. And it's definitely showing here on the map, on the globe. Pretty obvious here today across the Puerto Rico area. Again, this whole region gets squeezed, so to speak. In between, this is the area right here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see the Caribbean plate where the Puerto Rico sits on. The Puerto Rico Trench is associated with the Caribbean plate and the North American plate subduction zone right here across that area. And of course, over here around Barbuda and the eastern edge of the Caribbean plate, you have the South American plate interacting with this region. So subduction zones pretty much all over the place here. It's getting bullied and pushed around, and it's just a very dynamic area in terms of plate tectonics out here. So continue to watch that area for some movement. Notice quite a bit of uptick here recently across the region. Again, the latest one looks like a 2.5, 27 kilometers deep, bouncing back and forth here. We just had there's a 3.5 up around the Puerto Rico Trench and a 2.5 within the swarming area. So a little bit of bouncing back and forth. That tells me right there that there's quite a bit of squeezing going on between this area. So watch that region for some potential movement. Northern California did have another earthquake up here in our same area. That's been seeing a little bit of movement here in the past. I think we kind of seen this kick up yesterday morning, but it's past the 24-hour period here. Although this 4.1 looks like it's a little bit further south. Not quite on the San Andreas Fault. Looks like it's off the San Andreas Fault here, the northern segment. But about 9 kilometers deep south of this area that we seen yesterday picking up. We did see 4.7, 17 kilometers deep, and a couple other earthquakes here clustered within this region. Now this here shows many fault systems at the surface areas, but these are somewhat deeper quakes into the subduction zone of the Cascadia megathrust area. This is the extreme southern end of that subduction zone. And still kind of showing some activity today with that 4.1 coming in. About 8 o'clock my time, 9 kilometers deep, so a little bit shallower, and a little bit further south here of that area. Let me see if this has been reviewed or not. It has been reviewed. Historical data, obviously we get quite a bit of earthquake activity out here. We know Northern California here. Even, out into the Gorda Plate, areas of the Juan de Fuca Plate as well. The Cascadia subduction zone, when it goes, when it hits that 9.0, whether it's a full rupture or a partial rupture here of the southern end. Let me bring up the earthquake map here again. And by the way, that extends from about the Queen Charlotte Sound up here all the way down into Northern California. So this is the Pacific Northwest monster that sleeps offshore. It's a very dangerous area. And, not only for the shaking, but the tsunami potential. You can pretty much mimic what happened out there in Japan, if not worse, back in 2011. So it's coming. It's been 323 years since the last big one out here. But when it goes, we don't see little swarms, at least far as the scientific data shows us. We don't see, a bunch of 4s and 5s. I would, I'm not saying that's not accurate as far as the professionals stating that, making that statement, but who knows what happened back in 1700? We didn't have the equipment, we didn't have the sensitive monitoring equipment that we do have today. I'm sure we weren't monitoring tremor activity. That's the tremor that takes place down into the subduction zone itself. I'm sure we weren't monitoring that. This is actually a pretty new thing. The tremor monitoring. So I think we'll be able to see little telltale signs of when this thing may be getting ready to go. I think potentially that we could see a little bit of earthquake activity in a swarm fashion in a specific area that we haven't really seen before. I just don't see this thing popping off the 9-pointer without some type of given clues, prior to the big one out here. So who knows if we had a cluster of 3s and 4s back in 1700 around this area a day before, maybe a couple months before the big one hit. We don't know. That's why it's good to study all this activity right now before the next big one hits. That way, in the future, we can have some data to look at in terms of maybe, hopefully predicting the next Cascadia mega quake out here. I think tremor plays a big part in it. And this is the activity that occurs down into the subduction zone area itself, not at the strain levels. Sometimes we can get some strain building up down there in the tremor zone, and then we'll get these deeper movement quakes, which have been historically active, but most of the time we just see tremor activity down there. Let me show you guys real quick. We can go back the last month and look at the data, which has been somewhat minimal. We haven't really seen any major tremor activity since about October of last year, so we're coming up on a year. But you can pretty much see where the tremor activity has been over the last month, lacking a little bit of movement up here because we know that subduction zone extends up here, but really not seeing too much up there in the last month. Little spotty areas here through Washington and Oregon as well. Most of it has been in Northern California with the brunt of the activity, it looks like, in this region. A total tally over the last 30 days, 4,838 epicenters. It sounds like a huge number, but it's really not. It's actually been somewhat minor. If you look at this graph up here, these spikes here, these higher spikes indicate the amount of tremor per day. So of course, the higher the spike, the more tremors. And our last peak here was back in October of last year, and we really haven't seen anything comparable to back in October. And it looked like we had regular intervals of elevated tremor there over the last few years, but this year's been a little spotty. Only a couple events here that got up about 3/4 of the way as what we had seen last October. But tremor, that's obviously a sign of the slippage, so to speak. That's the only way I can explain it here. With the Juan de Fuca plate, go back to this map here. Juan de Fuca plate is a hole subducting underneath this North American plate here, which is to the east, right? East over here. Juan de Fuca plate is a hole, and that's just building up strain. I think the more tremor we see, I think the higher the strain is out there. Again, we can see some locked areas of the tremor zone occasionally, and then we'll notice some deeper movement earthquakes taking place down here, but these are not really earthquakes. These are the M energy magnitudes, I guess, if you want to call it, but these are slow release type of quakes occurring. And I think the higher number, the more peaks that we see, that's adding more strain up here at the subduction zone itself, the locked area which sits up offshore. And no doubt that will pop off again one day. So I definitely love to study the tremor activity because I think that's going to be key to predicting the next Cascadia. All right, 3.0 in the Alaska Peninsula. Not a big quake, but it is the last quake up here in the last hour or so. Let me go back here to the rest of the California area, see if we got anything stirring up out here across the west coast. Pacific Northwest, relatively quiet. Around the Bay Area of San Francisco, a handful of smaller quakes here. I don't think we've seen anything above the 2.5 level out here. One earthquake into the Bridgeport region. That was last night. Aside from that, we got that 4.1 into the Northern California area. Handful of smaller quakes out there in the southern portion of the state. Looks like a little earthquake there near Los Angeles. That earthquake coming in about 2 o'clock in the morning or so. But for the most part, just average general earthquake activity out here along a major plate boundary. Nothing major going on, and no swarms at all going on out here across Southern California. Into the Yellowstone area, things look pretty quiet up here. Let's see what we got for the map. Yellowstone National Park, super volcano, right? Scary word, but right now the super volcano is showing no signs of elevated activity. A couple smaller microquakes here overnight and one within the last hour or so. But for the most part, when you're looking at Yellowstone as a whole, things are quiet. quite as good at a supervolcano. Obviously, if this thing were building up some magma below, oh, it wouldn't just be in one little spot. This ain't that type of volcano. We would see it across the whole area of those seismograph stations there I just showed you. All right, what do we got here? Oklahoma, one earthquake out there, 2.1. That was about 4 o'clock in the morning. And a little bit of activity out here across the New Madrid seismic zone. A couple smaller earthquakes, including a 2.0 late last night, right in that hazard area of the New Madrid seismic zone. This is the intraplate type of fault system here. It's relatively old, quite old, and it has been active historically, producing some large damaging earthquakes back in the early 1800s, I believe. Don't remember the exact date, but the potential is there. These little earthquakes that pop up from time to time is just a good indicator, letting us know that this active region, well, this fault system here is active, and no doubt will continue to produce a big earthquake one of these days. One of these days for sure. All right, let's see what else we got across the area of the Western Pacific out here. A couple earthquakes kicking up here outside of Samoa. This one, the 4.9, relatively shallow. Looks like that did follow some deeper movement there yesterday, so things looks like they're wanting to strain up here specifically at the surface areas of the Tonga Trench, so watch that. Not a whole lot going on through New Zealand, at least according to the USGS map. I really don't see it on the EMSC model either. Let's see here. We got a lot of older quakes here from yesterday in this area. More movement up north, though, as far as active regions go, up into China, getting a little cluster of movement up here away from the plate boundary, but you can pretty much pinpoint where the strain and the stress builds up. You got the subduction zone here, where the plates creating the Himalayas, and all this land just getting warped over time, and that's another dynamic area in terms of plate stress. Subduction zone up here across the Himalayas, and I wish we could see the area out here a little bit better. I may have to get a different map here to show the general stress and plate movement. But that looks like that's where it's kind of kicking up here today, up in the northern areas around China. Japan over here, not a whole lot going on. Got one earthquake late last night, it looks like, a 4.6. Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, quiet again. This is just one of those areas I've been watching, and nothing's been happening. Every once in a while we'll see a 6-pointer out there, or some smaller quakes, but this area right here is reinforced by many different plate stresses out here. You got the Pacific plate, arrows pointing right here to the Japan Trench and the Kuril-Kamchatka where these arrows are. The North American plate pointing down at this area, backed up by the Eurasia plate. I mean, this area should have produced a large earthquake by now. 2011 Japan Trench area, yes, that was a big damaging earthquake, 9-pointer. But specifically up here along the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, we really haven't seen any major movement up here, and that's a little worrisome. I think that one's pretty much prime. Many systems out here are primed and ripe for large earthquakes. A little bit of movement out into the Mediterranean today as well. Some threes stirring up, and some divergent boundary activity out here, it looks like, across this plate boundary. Iceland's seen a handful of earthquakes as well. Some 2s and 3s out there. Not for sure if we got volcanoes getting active or what, but a little bit of movement kicking off. All right, what do we got for space weather activity here? Well, see what our newer sunspots are doing out here on the eastern limb. They're coming around the bend, but they're not super active yet. Notice the bright features out here coming around, indicating quite a few complex sunspots. We got 3451, and another one coming up here. Has not been named, but as of right now, well, going to have to keep an eye on this spot, I think. This is growing somewhat, but also at the same time, it looks like we have another. Is this a new sunspot or an older sunspot that's just kind of amplifying this little area right here? I know this area is circled, but I think this area grew overnight. Yeah, this area right about here. The circle area is up here, but it looks like this region down here wants to increase a little bit there in the within that little core of that sunspot. So keep an eye on this area as well. The rest of these regions not really showing any major interesting details from what I can see. So at least for now, keep an eye on at least two areas, and then we'll see what this one has to offer in the coming days once we get a little bit better view of it. Overall threat right now for solar flare activity, 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 45% chance, and X flare remains at about 5% chance. No major auroras expected, because we don't have any major solar storms headed our way. All right, Storm Prediction Center out here. Far as the weather goes, well, the current day one outlook, only a marginal risk here across eastern New Mexico, and that's probably due to looks like a 2% chance of tornado probability out there across Roswell, New Mexico. Interesting area. I've been out there quite a few times there. They got all that UFO stuff along the interstate. But yeah, all right, folks, I'm going to jump off here. Enjoy your weekend. Again, congratulations to the winners out there of the 100,000 subscriber giveaway. I'm going to try to get those prizes off tomorrow afternoon. And of course, for the ones that have won, I will give you guys a tracking number through email. I've already had quite a few of the winners get a hold of me and send out those prizes. Again, congratulations there for being picked out of the fishbowl. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later tonight. I got quite a bit of schoolwork I got to get done before tomorrow, so I'm going to be pretty busy, but also be out here on the side, kind of watching the live stream. Have a good one. Catch you guys a little bit later. Take care.